how is it that clergy in many denominations have been going to seminaries, theological colleges, and they've been taught modern biblical scholarship, they've been taught new theology, and yet almost everywhere you go, I don't know whether it's because they're frightened of scaring the people in the pews, but they're not giving the congregations either scholarship or leadership, and it seems to me that would be terribly helpful. I don't know what we do about it. When I engage with in private conversation, they will say, "Oh yes, I don't disagree with you, but you don't hear it from the pulpit wherever I go."
I don't think that clergy receive regularly support from those on the edge, verbal presence support. I think clergy hear from those who don't want things changed. And so I think that they don't feel that there's solid ground upon which they can walk. So if you provide that permission and encouragement and stand by them when shit hits the fan, I think that they would have a much broader space upon which they could tread. But I've had clergy write me and tell me that they're economic cowards. That's a horrible position to put someone in. They think they're going to lose their job. And that's why I went to the National Church saying we need to protect our clergy. So the people that you've talked to in your congregation, talk to them again. Broaden that size, that group, make it bigger until you have enough people there who are going to stand by your clergy person when she or he starts introducing some of these ideas to the community. Make sure that you provide care and support and liturgical elements that recognize things that are lost. And I mentioned last night or this morning or whenever I did it, last night, that I didn't do that adequately. That was a mistake that I made. That's what happens when you're on the bleeding edge. You're hemorrhaging before you realize that you've done it. So you learn later on where your mistakes were made. Give people the dignity of loss. Allow them that. But stand by your clergy and be the squeaky wheels. I don't know, Neil, do you want to add something to that? I'll put you on the spot there, but I mean, slightly.
It is very, very difficult, I think, particularly coming from a liberal position, to be honest, because you're trying to be sincere to your own faith, but you've got to hold that in tension with the needs and concerns of often a very diverse group of people. As a consequence, you find yourself having to tread quite carefully. And I think, so at times feeling compromised, but at other times trying to be pastoral in your approach. In terms of my preaching, for those people who've heard me preach, it's the social gospel that I preach. And that's what I stick to, because I refuse to say anything I don't believe in. But I do appreciate that others feel they need to say more than that, and as a consequence may feel, as I say, compromised. Sorry.
No, that's a valid word. Yeah, and thank you. I think that's a very honest representation, and I think that there will be. What West Hill does, what we've done is we've provided the language underneath all of those terms, so that instead of talking about salvation, I talk about what that means in very concrete human day-to-day terms. What does that mean? I don't believe in salvation as, in something that happens, based on what I've done through my life and I'm saved through Jesus Christ or my, good works or whatever. I think about salvation as, the courage I have to pick up shattered dreams and live them out the next day, right? That's what resurrection and salvation is all about for me. So instead of using those coded Christian words, I use just the words underneath them. And sometimes, you can do a whole service without any reference to any of those words, and people don't even notice because they feel the reverence in what's being offered. William Murray's book, Reverence, is a beautiful book about how that is so important in our contemporary world, and gives us permission to speak about that without using terms that click us into, as I was mentioning this morning, open that portal into that space of vulnerability and transformation. And I think if we slowly shift the language to the place where we're still presenting with exactly the same degree of integrity and reverence and beauty that we have in the past, that we will be provided safe passage in making those changes. But I do think that lay people need to be alongside part of the leadership and provide the permission and the security for clergy to do that work.
I just want to share with your husband that I used to be a social worker and I was also a vicar. That's my background. I want to ask about the institution and how institutions can work together better. Because it seems to me that the people I've met in different walks, and maybe in a prison as well, it's actually how that institution cares for individual people. I convene the local Progressive Christianity Network, and they have to advertise it because Gareth does the same in Sutton. And if you're interested at all in that, please show me your interest after this event, and or to Gareth over there. But the point is to say, in terms of institutional personal care, it's really shocking the extent to which I meet people in business, I meet people in the national health, in schools, who feel that they as individuals are not cared for by the institution. Mm-hmm. And that is such a big turn-off. Their confidence is down here, and how the church, etc., can help in that. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to invite you to dream up a response to that, because I think the institutions like if I talk about West Hill as an institution, it has everything in place, all the checks and balances to ensure that it is honoring people where they are, lifting them into a place of transformation, and challenging them to live that out beyond. But if we were to write that down as a prescription for another community, we'd fail terribly. I think that what a community can offer has to emerge out of that community, and then there need to be those checks and balances in place to keep it from becoming an inhumane place. Institutions can be inhumane. They can also pull us toward the highest ideals we have for ourselves and challenge us to live those out. So I don't think that it is inherent in the word institution that humanity is diminished. I think that that's certainly possible if we don't demand that they remain humane.
So I'm here to say thank you, and I do say that sincerely, both to Gretta and to Scott, for giving us glimpses of a world beyond beliefs that divide, particularly at this moment of crisis in world history, a time of planetary, social, religious, perfect storm, as you described it, a time of great need. Gretta, you mentioned on a number of occasions the founding of the United Church of Canada in 1925, a founding that came about through a commitment, in part, a large part, to the social gospel movement in Canada. And that social gospel movement brought together many different Christians for the sake of justice. And today and last night, I've heard a call from you both, for a new social gospel movement, or maybe put it in a better way, a new social good news movement. A movement of noble truth, living out peace, justice, and empathy for all, celebrating our common humanity. this is a call for a new church. And to Scott, you have set to music the very values and principles of that new church, the very content of the social good news. And I quote, "So I will say Amen." We say Amen. Amen to acts of sweet compassion. Say Amen to every effort for peace. Say, so be it, when plans are made for justice, for freedom to be. It will come from you and me. Scott, Gretta, thank you. Let's show our appreciation.
So Revd Gretta Vosper is a minister for the United Church of Canada and identifies herself as an atheist. Now, for Unitarian circles, that's normal and very much welcomed. And I hope today's service will give you a reflection of how we all can do a service where everyone feels welcomed, everyone feels a sense of belonging, and as Gretta says, creates a barrier-free space for gatherings on Sunday.
We welcome everyone into our community this morning and recognize that as we gather here, we come from lives that have been busy and full. And some of you may have come from a week or a month or whatever that has brought you a particular joy. And so at the beginning of our service, I invite you to share any celebrations that you may have experienced this week, that you have coming up this week, or anything that you'd like to bring into the community and remind us that we are here to celebrate one another and the joys in our lives. Anything that is happening? I want to celebrate that we had a great couple of days at Cars Lane, some excellent conversation, lots of good questions, lots of back and forth, and lots of wisdom coming from the people who joined together in that gathering. So that's a celebration for me. Anyone else?
I would like to share that my daughter is doing much better in her studies and in her health after some struggles over the last term and over the summer.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Any other celebration? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to share that our first granddaughter was born on Wednesday. Very personal thing. The first granddaughter had 6 grandchildren.
Oh, lovely. First granddaughter. Does she have a name?
Hannah.
Hannah. A beautiful name. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Yes?
I'd like to share about my younger daughter, who's been a professional musician for years, retrained as a midwife, and started her job at Revd Hospital last week, and delivered her first solo baby in the birthing pool, which she said was a piece of cake really, because she didn't have to do very much. But one thing that she did manage to do, when everything else was successful, apparently she turned it off and flooded the room.
Oh, well.
It was okay.
It was okay. Well, congratulations. It wasn't Hannah, was it? Oh, okay. All right. Wonderful. That's wonderful to have a new career change that is so successful. Anyone else want to share something? Okay. Thank you for that. We welcome you into the space with our celebrations. And now I invite you to rise and to greet one another. And I invite you to be as informal as you like or as formal as you like. If you really feel more comfortable just staying where you are, stay where you are. If you want to get up and walk around the entire room, I invite you to do that. So let us greet one another. Well, good to have you. I got to turn this off. we have a recorded foghorn at West Hill that plays when we get a little carried away and we don't want to sit down again, and the person on the computer puts the foghorn on, which reminds us all we're to sit down and take care of ourselves. At this point, I would invite anyone who has any announcements to come forward and share those with the community, and I would also want to celebrate that's one of the ways in which we share who we are with the community, offering of our time and our talents, our financial resources, all of it making possible a community that can bring people together, open their hearts, and help them transform their lives in order to be of service in the world, in wherever their gifts might call them and allow them to do. So that's the gift of being a community, and we support it by our volunteer time and by our energies and by our financial offerings.
Good morning. I bring greetings to you this morning from the church at Cars Lane, and on behalf of the church, I would like to say, first of all, a huge thank you to Winnie for the invitation this morning, and to you and to Angela, thanks for your welcome. It's very good to be here. Of course, it goes without saying that I personally also want to say a huge thank you to Gretta and to Scott for a really inspiring weekend, which has been so long in the planning, but it's such a joy to have you with us. And this is a wonderful climax to that weekend. So thank you.
We have such an impact on one another. Travel does this for me so much. I meet you and, oh, I impact you, and I never knew you existed before, and now I do. So my responsibility, my sense of responsibility widens. And also this life, this web affects me in various ways, and it affects you. And you may have heard something tremendous this week about how life affects you, and you may have heard something very upsetting. And we're in that together. So we remind ourselves of that. And then again, hold up those values higher than the highest ceiling, to say we will follow those values of love and compassion and justice in every way we can, and try to help each other do that. So we just remind ourselves of that. I play a little bit, and then we go into a song that's in your songbook to begin our sharing time. I'll just play a little, and your thoughts can go to ground yourselves there, and then we'll sing it.
We move now into our community sharing time. It's an opportunity for us to do the work of creating community, and I speak of it weekly as the most important part of our being together. Because as we share those things that are on our hearts, as we share those burdens, those challenges, those bleak moments with one another, and weave them in with the joys and the delights and the celebrations that we each bring into this place, We weave together a resilient path upon which we can walk as a community and as individuals throughout the difficult parts of our lives. And this is what community has most to offer us as individuals and as those who participate in communities beyond this place. And so I invite you to join in as you're able to speak of those moments of joy and those challenges that have come upon you throughout this week or in the past months. Come forward, as is your tradition, to light a candle if you would like to do that as you share with the community. And I turn you to the bulletin, which has the responses which we share on a weekly basis. If it's something that it brings you joy and that is of delight, feel free to conclude it with "in this abundant blessing," and the community is invited to wrap that individual with their response. We share the joy. And if it's a moment of challenge, a bleak remembrance that you share with this community, I invite you to conclude it with "in this our time of need," and so too the community will wrap you with their hearts symbolically by concluding that statement with "may love abound." Our world is challenged in countless ways. And just what is raised in this space is indicative of need and concern and loss the world around. As we reflect on the chaos and suffering and challenges that face nations and peoples and communities and individuals, may we feel the presence of that need in our hearts, such that we are called forward to engage in conversations, to make change where we can, to share understanding, so that we might, as a world, commit to finding ways to heal pain, to overcome challenge, and to create a place of peace for change to happen. In this, our time of need, may love abound. And now we move into the more intimate section of our sharing time, when you speak directly about things that are happening in your lives or in the lives of those you love and know. Or perhaps you may wish to focus on a particular situation in the world that has some meaning to you, some challenge for you, or some recognition that you'd like to bring more completely into this space. And also to share not just things that are challenged, but things that are a joy that you see shifting in the world that are positive that you'd like to speak about as well. And again, I invite you, as is your tradition, to come and light a candle if you'd share with that too. So I invite you to rise or to stay seated, to come forward, but to speak about what is in your heart, be it joy or be it challenge.
Small concern for one of my colleagues, and all I know is that he's going through a difficult time at the moment, and I need to be helpful and to make sure that he's not carrying too much of the burden, and I would like to share that concern with you all.
In this our time of need, may love abound.
I want to share a concern for Greta and for Scott, who at the moment are experiencing a very difficult time at home with Greta's denomination.
Thank you.
And we share that in love and hope for the very best.
In this our time of need, may love abound. Thank you.
I'd like to share my concern. There is quite a few European people in our Unitarian congregations who are living in the uncertainty of what's going on with the Brexit, and have received letters saying that they have to give up their job. It's frightening. Just want to keep them in our thoughts as we go forward with our negotiations.
And this our time, may love abound. Thank you.
thinking about my friend, I'll call him Roger. He's just been released from prison after being in prison custody for 2.5 years. I think he's going to be fine, but I know he's worried about what's going to happen to him. He's gone back to live with his family. See how it goes. He came out last Wednesday. So I'm thinking about him. He's a good friend of mine.
And that's an in this abundant blessing, we share the joy, and an in this time of need. May love abound. Thank you.
I'd like to share the contradiction I'm feeling, that I'm in the stages of moving home, and I've got the luxury of being able to afford somewhere a little bit nicer, in a nicer suburb, a nicer apartment, and yet when I walk round Five Ways there are so many people who are without a home of any sort, and what are we doing for them?
It's a challenge. In this abundant blessing, we share the joy, and in this our time of need, may love abound. Thank you.
After about 30 years of happy marriage, my wife developed dementia, which proved to be Alzheimer's. And I spent several very difficult years looking after her, but now she is in a good nursing home where she receives lovely care. And as a result of my experiences, I've become a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Society, and that has brought me great joy. And every moment spent helping with that is tremendous. So I'd like to acknowledge that even from something as terrible and as evil as Alzheimer's, something good can come.
In this abundant blessing, we share the joy, but recognizing the difficult journey there, in this our time of need, may love abound. Unless someone has anything else to add, we'll move into the third part, the third section of our sharing time. And this is when we recognize that there are so many who have seen places in the world that need had manifest itself through our own ignorance, our dismissal, our lack of recognition of human rights, a chaotic world. And they have, in response to seeing that, to noticing, they have found a place for themselves to be part of the change that was needed, to put their shoulders against that wall that seemed to be impossible and have with all their energies pressed against it. And so created opportunities for us to be inspired by them or to align ourselves up alongside them and push that wall as well. And so I invite you to name those organizations that are doing good in the world, that you know of, that you work with, that you support financially, that you just dream of being part of because you know the work that they do is good and strong and right. We just name those organizations or the individuals who have inspired their work into this space so that we can acknowledge that good happens, that individuals make it happen, that we are the agent for goodness to come into the world, and to celebrate the work that is ongoing. So I just invite you to name those organizations or those individuals that you want to acknowledge in this space this morning.
Carslane, this church, and West.
Yes.
Citizenship.
The Alzheimer's Society.
Providing mental health leisure forum.
Yes, thank you.
Level projects.
Yes, Choir with No Name.
Really Debt campaign that campaigns for financial justice worldwide and to try to ensure that the rich nations don't bigger the
Yes.
Church Country Foundation.
The United Nations High Commission for Refugee.
The Clergy Project, which provides a safe haven and resources for clergy who no longer believe, but are often still embedded in congregations. You want to add something? No? May we find ways to align our hearts with those visions that see and taste a better world, that know that good can come out of suffering, and that work tirelessly to make that happen. Those visionaries whose dreams drive their everyday. And may we find ways to offer what little we might in terms of our energy, our resources, our support, our commendations, so that that work continues to unfold in the places of need in this world and create within it places of peace, of hope, of caring. In this abundant blessing, we share the joy. I invite you now to share with me the words of commitment that we share each week, and the intention is to so imprint them on our hearts that our everyday is lived with these within us, being brought out by the choices we make, the words we share, the energies we offer, according to the values that we raise in these words. As I live every day, I want to be a channel for peace. May I bring love where there is hatred, and healing where there is hurt, joy where there is sadness, and hope where there is fear. I pray that I may always try to understand and comfort other people, as well as seeking comfort and understanding from them. Wherever possible, may I choose to be light in the darkness, a help in times of need, and a caring, honest friend. And may justice, kindness, and peace flow from my heart forever. Amen.
The first reading is by Kevin Hearn, who writes for the New York Times. I forgot how good it feels to be rooted. And to be rooted is not the same thing as being tied down. To be rooted is to say, here I am nourished, and here will I grow. For I have found a place where every sunrise shows me how to be more than what I was yesterday. And I need not wander to feel the wonder of my blessing. And when you are rooted, defending that space ceases to be an obligation or a duty and becomes more of a desire.
And this reading is from Christine Pirifo, who's an English lecturer from the University of Chicago. As humans, we roam the entire world. We even venture beyond its not space. The whole planet is ours, but the whole planet is not our home. Instead, home is the ground we measure with our own 2 feet. And home is the place that measures us. Home is the place that names us, and the place we, in turn, name. It feeds us, body and soul. And if we are living well, we feed it too. Home is the place we cultivate with our love. Offered as wisdom for the journey, may we allow light. Thank you.
Each week, based on the theme of the service, I write a focused moment to bring us to attentiveness in a different manner than we often do, to find those places within us that are spoken to through poetry, through reflection, through the connection that we make with one another, that are often intangible. We go through our lives in this crazy, busy way and often neglect to allow what is deep within us to speak. And so I write these each week, often finding them on Sunday mornings before me as something new that I haven't seen before, despite the fact that it came out of me. So I share with you our focus moment today. We live in a world of surprise and beauty, a world of color and complexity, a world of challenge and delight, a world of anxiety and alleluias. We are lifted and fed by the wonder of it, humbled and laid low by its tragic realities. In the interwoven moments of its blessing and blight, we make our lives. May we, in the spaces between sorrow and delight, in the moments between harsh reality and beauty, in the fear that lies in wait between truth and possibility, learn the art of making light, that we might shine with peace and live with hope. Together on this journey, we share what comes with dignity, grace, and love. May it ever be so. I don't often get to speak with a bowl of light in front of me like this, symbols of our joys and sorrows, our connection. Light for us is a deeply important metaphor because we are called to make light in this world. When we're born, when an infant comes into the world, the possibilities for that life are infinite. Through the course of days, they get trimmed down and we find ourselves sometimes boxed into places that we may not have chosen, that our parents may not have chosen, that infinite reality may have offered different opposing opportunities to. But we still might find deep in our hearts that source of light. So it's a gift to be standing with this bowl of light before me. I wish to share with you a bit of the journey that life is as we celebrate and make it known at West Hill. And my hope is that through that story, there will be moments when you find a place of resonance. Despite the fact that I'm talking about a congregation and what the congregation does, our hope is that it reflects the journey that each of us individually is called to and the ways in which we can manifest those good parts of that journey, those important elements of what it is that we need to be in the world around us. And I'm going to use sort of some formulaic pieces that have emerged in our community over the course of the last 15 years or so that have become central to how we see ourselves and how we offer ourselves to the world. Many years ago, back in the early years of this millennium, it seems strange to talk about a millennium as though we have all of it to enjoy, when indeed we'll only have these very defined moments at its beginning. But at the beginning of this millennium, as we recognized those things that were barriers to participation for those who sought to find themselves again, to experience connection, to journey that path to wholeness in community without having to ascribe to a set of words and language that belonged to a tradition that may be foreign to them or be well known to them but no longer something that can feed them. We sought to create a space that resided underneath the complexities of that language, but spoke about who we were as individuals and called us to the same task that that language was perhaps part of and meant to illuminate. And so we worked together to create a document we called Vision Works that spoke of who we were and how we wanted to live and what we felt was important in this life. And the very first time that document came into being and was printed and voted on by the community, and when it was first being shared in a meeting, I became aware that the first statement was extraordinary. I'd been part of the working group. I'd sat down with those other people around that table. We had hammered it out. We'd gone at it. We'd crafted it. We'd made it something alive. But I hadn't really thought of the implications of the first statement until someone rose and said, "Wow, it's so interesting. We've said our foundation is spiritual. That sets us apart from every other Christian church. Their foundation is the Bible." And I thought, oh my goodness, we just did that. I hadn't even noticed, as the community had articulated, what for it was going to be the ground going forward, what they were going to build who they were upon. And it wasn't going to be what traditionally was understood to be the foundation for the church. Oh, we sing those songs about, or we used to, those songs about the church's one foundation is Jesus Christ her Lord. No, the church's one foundation has always been the Bible, because that's where we learn about Jesus and that's where we define him as Lord. But before that, there came this thing that emerged at West Hill, this recognition that our foundation is spiritual. It's what is at the heart and the essence of us, and how we long to get back to that and find what that is in our lives. How we wish to bring that out, to let it seep through every pore so that we are living light in this world. And I was amazed that they had brought that forward right in front of me as though a midwife to something that they wanted to have in the world, but that was unknown until it lay there in front of them. So we used that document and pinned our hopes upon it for creating a community that could share with one another those things that were so crucially important to how we wanted to be. We talked about a shared leadership and stopped identifying just a single person as the minister, but recognized we were all ministers in the places in which we were situated in our lives. In your new apartment, you'll find people around you to whom you will minister in your relationship with them. And you will minister to the individual who enters the hospital. You'll minister to your daughter as she undergoes all the challenges that this new role will bring to her, all the fears, the sorrows, and the delights. We minister to one another in our lives as we find who we are and offer that space of home and healing to those who journey this life with us. The different manifestations that came to be in that document included that we stretch ourselves beyond privileging a single book from which we could learn who we were, from which we could find the values by which we wanted to live. It challenged us to look to other sacred writings, to secular writings, to popular culture. And so we have learned from Charles Dickens, we've learned from Purifoy and Hearn, who offer us their gifts today. We've even learned from Joss Whedon, the writer of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, whose words challenged us one Sunday to think differently. And on one evening, a longest night service, we learned from Doctor Who. So we recognize that there are many sources of inspiration, many voices that can feed the light within us, many places that we can find our way back to that journey, that spiritual journey that we so often call home. Once that document began to become real in the community, changes happened. And some of the things that changed were the way that we gathered on Sunday mornings, the things that we did during the week, the books that we studied. There was a long-standing book study at West Hill that engaged books about religion, learned about some of the critical scholarship that formed the way we were together as a community. And then, again, in one of those surprise birthings, made the leap from books about religion to books about ethics and how we want to live. Not everyone was happy about that, feeling that because we were a church, we were supposed to be talking about religious things. But because we are a church is exactly why we need to be talking about the things that are important in our lives, about how we are to live with one another. And we came to speak about living in right relationship as our responsibility, living in right relationship with ourselves, first of all, honoring who we are, acknowledging some of our frailties, leaning into those places of growth that we needed to find out about ourselves, hard though that so often is, and easy to ignore though that often is. If we challenge ourselves to be in right relationship with ourselves, we need to be able to learn. We need to have the guts to pay attention to who we are. We need to have the courage to listen to what people tell us about who we are, even when we don't want to know what they have to say. We need to be honest with what it is that we know about ourselves and what it is that is revealed to us by others, so that we can become everything that we might in our relationships with others. We seek to be in right relationship with others, those people that we live with, those people we love, those people we meet on the streets, those people with whom we work and who challenge us when we end up with a little bit more of a burden as we care for them. We want to be in right relationship with those people we know because we want them to be nice back to us, but because we also want to nurture their light, to help it shine as brightly as it possibly can. And so we mirror back to them their beauty and their goodness and the wholeness that they can offer the world. We mirror that back. And if we have someone mirroring something back to us, we find out who we are. It's only when we're completely honest with the people that we know and love that they can mirror the wholeness of ourselves back to us. Otherwise, we end up with a caricature of ourselves or some small picture of who we think we can be and not the wholeness of who we might. And in that seeking right relationship with others, we're seeking right relationship too with those people we will never meet, either because they live on the other side of the world but supply us with many of the comforts that we accommodate into our lives and make part of who we are, or because they are several generations hence, and we will never meet them because we will be long gone. But we wish to live in right relationship with them, even to the 7th generation, as our Indigenous brothers and sisters have taught us to see and understand ourselves. Right relationship calls much out of us. And so, because of perhaps maybe those future generations or the generations that are being born now, we seek to be in right relationship with the planet as well. Because the planet upon which we live, when we were grounded only in the Bible, we had the opportunity to just plunder. The Bible says that the world was made for us, and sure, it has that little thing about stewardship, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't there for us. When we see it as part of who we are, as that ground, that home upon which we live, within which we are connected, we see it as something different. It's no longer something that's there just for us. It's something with which we live in harmony and must live in harmony if future generations are going to have the same gifts and the same blessings from it that we have known. So those are the relationships that we seek to live out. I used to speak of God, I used to talk of God, speaking of it as a relationship, what we get to create between us. And we can create something beautiful and sacred, by which I mean something that's so important we can't risk losing it. It has to be beautiful and whole. And I need to honor the dignity of you, and you need to honor the dignity of me. And we work together and create something beautiful. And once we've done that, we can draw upon the strength of that no matter where we are, no matter what our circumstances. It can give us strength and courage. It can beat out fear. It can call us to be bigger than we ever thought we could be because we'd created that sacred, beautiful thing. And that's what I called God, and I held us accountable for creating it in the world. It's our responsibility to create that power in the world, to make the world light through our relationships. So each week we come into the space and we talk about relationships, not in that really, obvious way in which we did. But we gather in the space to do 3 things. Scott articulated them many years ago as we struggled to see what it was we do. Most churches, people come in together and they're coming to worship God, or they're coming, to be part of a Christian tradition. And we weren't obviously doing any of that, though there are many in our pews who still hold an idea of God that they value and that they hear me celebrating and supporting, despite the fact I never use that language. But we wanted to identify what it is we do. Is it of value anymore if you're not doing what church normally does? What is it that you do that is meaningful? And so Scott wrestled with that with the Elements Committee for some time and identified that we do 3 things when we come together. We ground ourselves in the interconnectedness of life. We recognize that not one of us exists in a vacuum. Not one of us survives without the connections and relationships that we have, not only to other people, but to the whole of the planet, to the earth that's created by the plant, or to the oxygen that's created by the plants, and by the plants that feed us, and that we turn into carbon dioxide that the plants can eat. It's that cycle of beauty and wonder in which we live. And we are connected around the world, more increasingly aware of that than we have ever been in previous generations. It's a connection, a powerful connection that could be mined for beauty and light, or mined for profit and comfort. And it is ours to choose how we wish to be embedded in that interconnectedness of life, how we will draw upon it to find our own sustenance and live that out. And then that's where the relationship thing comes in, because we draw upon it so that we might be light to others. Grounded in that interconnectedness of life, what are our responsibilities to it? How do you, once you realize that, what does that do to you? If we're that connected, can we do anything but love? Can we do anything but find a way to value and be a positive force within that interconnected reality? I think we're challenged to do that. I think that's what we have to do. I know that we can use it and abuse it and get our own personal needs satisfied by it, but is that really what we should be doing? So we speak about being guided by love. Our interconnectedness calls love from us. And so we seek to find ways that we can offer love back into that interconnected world, that interconnected whole in which we are rooted and from which we gain our sustenance. But that, and Scott has different ways of understanding this, but for me, love is so complex. I mean, the way that Angela would live love out in her workplace might not be the way I'd live love out in the workplace. I might not even recognize what she's doing as love. And similarly, you may not recognize what Chris is doing as love. We have different ways to interpret, different capacities, different contexts. Something that I can do may not be something that you can do, and something that you can do may not be something that someone else can do. We offer love from where we are. We're guided by it, but we offer it from where we are and with what we have to offer, and we can only do that. Sometimes we need to stretch ourselves and offer a little more than we might comfortably want to, but we're grounded where we are and we have much to offer. And when we do that, we create that beauty of relationship from which we and others take strength. It's a gift that gives back and gives out. But as we watch other people offer love into the world, as we become aware of people's contexts and challenges, as we recognize the many facets to that word, we're challenged to grow. And so at West Hill, we speak of growing in wisdom each week. We come together to learn about those relationships, to ground ourselves in the interconnectedness of life, to call ourselves to live out love, and to grow in wisdom, to grow in our understanding of how we are with one another, of what our place is in the world, what we might offer, what we might do. Those are the two triads of how we are at West Hill. And we seek to be in right relationship with self, others, and the planet. And we seek to recognize our groundedness and interconnectedness, our being guided by love, and our growing day by day in wisdom. And so as a community, when we come together and we focus on these things, when we're inspired by such diverse sources, when we finish our gathering together, the hope is that each heart will have found from what has happened, be it the readings or the sharing time or the perspective that I share. We call it perspectives, and we have a little S at the end of it in a bracket. That means that what I say, you get to take it out and share it from your perspective. You get to add who you are to it, and that's your responsibility. Not to take what I've said and go out there, but to take what I've said into you, and then you go out there and share what it is that you know and that you have to offer. And so the hope is that something, the music, the sharing time, the readings, the words, might open you up in some new way. Plant some new rootedness in you, from which you can draw strength and from which you can offer love, that you might be transformed in this coming together, this work of creating relationship, this work of being community. And then you might be light, not just to yourself, but to the world. Thank you. You go out into a world that will work hard at tearing you to pieces, simply by your going out there. So go out with courage and with hope. Go out with a recollection of those threads that tied you together in this place. Go out with the strength that you know in your heart that allows you to rebut any of that that would break your soul or break your heart or challenge your life beyond recognition. Know what's in your heart is light. Know that it is yours to shine. Know that it is yours to share. So be light in the world, not just for today, but for the whole of your lives. And now I invite you to sing, I Pledge to All Humanity. the British Humanist Association, and you could get the Nomad podcast to put that out, and you could get the Oasis Network, and I could put it out through my network, and we have a bunch of places and times. You can make it happen. I mean, I'm hoping you can make it happen, because it has to happen, right? And that's some of the work that I think, you know, I really want to be part of helping make that happen. And sowing seeds in all of your brains is part of that work, to figure out how you can make it happen.
We have groups here, and some of you belong to them, like Heretics Anonymous and Thinking Aloud, groups which meet monthly, and we've had these lectures, as I have already said today, for 18 years. But always the issue has been, how do we carry these radical thinking into our worship? And if, as you suggest, a church like Rachel's church or this one, or any church, might decide to have, perhaps even just occasionally, worship offered, which is, well, a service, whether you call it worship or a gathering or whatever, which is different. What would you call it? Because surely the word atheist would be a red rag to a bull.
I wouldn't call it worship, that's for sure. But a gathering is possible. I think that, I mean, I don't have all the answers for this, but the Oasis Network has worked with a number of groups now and has best practices that have figured that out. How do you do that? And it's not the same thing as transitioning a community. It's about creating space for a new community to coalesce. And you may find that some people go to both things. Chances are they'll end up at the same time, though, so you won't have that option for that. Every Oasis community that has developed has chosen to meet on Sunday morning, because that's when they're mostly available. So I don't go to the Oasis community in Toronto because I have a Sunday morning gig that I have to go to every week. But they function quite well without my thing. I launched it. I used my media attention to let people know about it, right? So that sort of gave it a little boost. But I think the point is not to transition the community. That's a completely different task, and that's working with the worship leaders, with the leadership of the board, and it's allowing for things to shift over time, and avoiding some of the issues that, you know, we created, right? Get some media attention about, you know, invite an atheist to come and speak here on a Sunday morning, and let the media know that that's happening, right? Like that kind of thing, so that getting media attention is extremely important. I mean, I now know that. But it is important for those kinds of things.